Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Whatever Happened to the Gentleman. I'm Sam Morris. I can't wait to chat to you all about a simple tool that can help you when trying to manage your emotions. But just quickly, before that, I just wanted to invite you all to my free webinar, Confident Dating Sorted. I'm running this free webinar, as I say, it's free, completely free. In the webinar, I am going to blow your mind with a few simple tricks, things that are not difficult for you to do, that will help you become more confident in your dating, deal with rejection, and learn how the people around you may be preventing your dating success. I'll put the link in the show notes and hopefully I will see you there. If this is the first time that you're ever hearing my voice, then welcome. To the people that regularly listen to this show, thank you as always. And I'm going to go straight in with managing your emotions today. This is one of my favourite tools, my favourite techniques. I do it with all my one-to-one clients because it's really simple to do once you get the hang of it, and it is something that I do in my everyday life. This little technique is going to help you in all areas of your life, not just dating, not just relationships, but it is particularly useful when dealing with conflict and arguments. So if you've been in a relationship before where there's been lots of arguments, there's been lots of shouting or ignoring each other because you just cannot actually deal with that conflict and that disagreement, then this tool will be perfect for you, because when you next get into another relationship, you'll have learned how to deal with this, which means you won't be repeating the same mistakes over and over again. This little tool is something called the helicopter tool. The idea behind it is really simple. Imagine your mind is a helicopter. When you are stuck in an emotion, so maybe you're angry, maybe you're sad, maybe you're frustrated, it can feel like you are a helicopter sitting on the ground in the middle of London or the middle of New York, Times Square. You are caught up in the chaos, you're caught up in the noise, the traffic, and you can't get out because everything's so busy. And that is what happens to your brain when you are in conflict. You cannot get out of it very easily. And because there's so much chaos and so much noise, you can't actually think straight, which means your responses will not be the best. The helicopter tool is like you imagining yourself flying up and hovering above the situation. And from that bird's eye view, you can see things differently, without all the chaos, without the intense emotions clouding your judgment. So how does it work? Well, the first step is to think about and acknowledge what you're actually feeling. Put a name to it. I am feeling angry. I am feeling frustrated. I am sad. I am jealous. Whatever it is that you're feeling, acknowledge it and say it. If you can't say it out loud because you're in the middle of an argument, just say it in your head. And the more that you practice this, and you could practice this in everyday life, not when you're in the middle of conflict, just maybe at work and your boss tells you to do something and it does annoy you, sit at your desk and just say in your head, I am annoyed. That situation annoyed me. Because the more you acknowledge those feelings, and you can certainly do it when you're happy as well, I am happy today. The more you acknowledge it, the more your brain becomes used to that, which means when you are put in these difficult situations, when you find yourself in a situation where you are having conflicts with someone, you will easily be able to recognize what that emotion is because your brain is used to doing it. What this does is it gives you a focus point. And as I say, the more you start to acknowledge those feelings, the easier it becomes. And if you struggle to put names to certain emotions that you feel, just Google it. In schools with children that have high levels of emotions nowadays, they didn't do this when I was at school, nowadays they start from maybe 6 or 7, where they start actually putting pictures of emotions out. So they do biscuits where they draw in icing pen a smiley face for that is happy and a sad face for that is sad. We didn't do that at school, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably didn't do that at school either. So sometimes we struggle to actually recognise what those emotions are. All you need to do is literally Google types of emotions, and there will be so much information there, and then you can actually start to recognise when you feel what. I also want you to take a deep breath. So breathe in for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds. That gives your brain time to process. Not all of us are born with quick acting skills. And this is something that I learned in university actually, and there's like a whole psychology behind it: reflection, inaction, reflection, after action. And reflecting in action is when you are trying to deal with a certain situation that is actually quite difficult, and you're thinking about how am I going to react to this, but you're in the situation. You haven't walked away from that and can be like, oh, I should have said this, or I should have done that. You're actually in the situation, and it takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice to actually get to a point to be able to reflect in action. So if you're not doing it yet, that's fine. This is what this whole podcast is all about, this episode. Take your deep breath, recognize what the emotion is that you are feeling. The next step is to close your eyes and imagine that you are a helicopter and that you have just lifted yourself up from that situation, and you're just hovering. You're hovering above, and you're able to see the different points of view. From here, you can see everything. You aren't in the midst of chaos. You're giving yourself emotional distance. This does work well if you have got other techniques to use. If you've got self-talk, that's a great one. I will possibly do an episode on self-talk at some point, so hit that subscribe button if you are interested in that. Now I want you to think about the situation that you are reacting to. So I want you to ask yourself some questions. Why am I feeling like this? Is this a permanent feeling? Most likely it's not. Feelings are not permanent, generally, because they go up and down, they fluctuate. What does this situation mean to me? Because it must mean something, else you wouldn't have a really strong emotion about it. It just wouldn't happen. And I also want you to think about what's happening within your body. When you are in certain situations, your body will react to those situations. When you are angry, your heart might beat really fast, you might sweat, you might be struggling to breathe. The whole term of seeing red is an actual thing where you can't see clearly. When you're anxious, again, you may have those same feelings, but it will be particular to you. So think about a time when you were really anxious, maybe a job interview. What happened to your body? Did you feel your heart beating? Did you feel like you couldn't breathe? Did you go for what people call a nervous poo? Because that is a body reaction to an emotion. I want you to acknowledge that. And if, you may not want to do these steps in the middle of an argument, but what you can do is you can start to recognise these things after the fact. When you start reflecting after, it builds the path to being able to reflect whilst you're doing things and acting that way. Now I want you to think about another person. So someone that isn't involved in this situation, how would they see it? And lastly, think about the person that you are in conflict with. What does this look like to them? So to do this exercise when it's not actually happening, you can think about a previous time Maybe it's a previous partner and you had an argument. Go through those steps thinking about it after the fact, because the more you practice doing this, the better you will become. And then when you are in those situations, it will become automatic to you. You won't even need to think about it. In these situations, you have to make a decision that you are only responsible for yourself. You cannot take responsibility for the person that you are in conflict with, but you can take responsibility for yourself and the way that you react to situations. Why does this tool work so well? Part of the reason is it comes down to the power of perspective, really. When we're really deep in our emotions, we do get tunnel vision, and we focus on what's wrong, we focus on what's hurting, and we lose sight of the whole picture. And when we put the helicopter tool in there and we start practicing it, it interrupts that cycle by physically and mentally pulling you out of that tunnel. So you don't have that tunnel vision anymore. It also engages your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for thinking, problem solving. When we are in an emotional overload, the brain triggers the fight, flight, freeze response. Using this technique, you will activate the rational part of your brain and will calm down the emotional side of the brain. And there is research that support how different types of visualizations can shift brain activity. And there's been studies that have found the simple act of mentally stepping back can lead to long-term emotional regulation, which is what you want. So I'm going to talk about my real life example from this week. It's literally this week. I was going into town and I went into the car park. It was a multi-storey car park. It's a bit difficult to explain, but essentially I was going up and another car was coming down. There was those little white lines, those dotted lines for the person that was coming down to say, you have to stop and let the other person go. And it said on the floor, give way to them. So I obviously carried on because he was supposed to stop, and he nearly hit my car because he did not want to stop. He proceeded to change his route and follow me. He was leaving. He was coming the out way and I was coming in. He changed his route of where he was actually going because he was so angry about the fact that he felt that he should have gone even though there was a giveaway sign. He wound down his window. He was screaming at me, and I sat there and I was like, oh. And I wound down my window and said, you need to learn to read. And then I wound my window back up and I sat there and I closed my eyes and I took a deep breath and I just said to myself, you're not responsible for him. You're responsible for yourself. You don't need to say anything else to him because you did the right thing in that situation. It's not your fault. You're not responsible for him. And I just sat there and eventually he drove off. He made a very rude gesture to me with his tongue and his fingers, and I just didn't respond. That is a real life situation of where I have sat back and I have looked at that situation and I thought to myself, he is clearly a very angry man, because something as simple as that, because people, they cut people up driving all day long. That happens. Any journey that you will go on, if you drive, you will see that people cut people up, people make driving mistakes all day long. So for somebody to get that angry about the fact that I went the right way and he didn't, he's obviously got some issues himself. And me reacting to him, I could have swore back at him and, told him to shut up, whatever. that wouldn't have helped the situation at all. Maybe he's had a really bad day. Or maybe he just likes to intimidate women. Who knows? But it's not my problem. That's his problem. I did the best that I could in that situation. Another real life situation, like where you can practically use these tools. Maybe you're dating somebody new and you suddenly feel insecure, like a big wave of insecurity about where you stand with this person. And this happens a lot with dating, certainly at the beginning, because you don't know where you stand. Instead of reacting out of that insecurity, maybe texting, maybe over-analysing, you can use this helicopter tool. You can visualise yourself zooming out and looking in from a bird's eye view. And you should realise that this emotion that you're feeling will pass. Your insecurity doesn't need to dictate how you respond to a situation. Your insecurity has been created by previous experiences, but this situation is a new experience. You can see the bigger picture. This relationship is still new. It doesn't need to be rushed. Another little example could be you're having an argument with a partner, and instead of diving into it, stepping into the helicopter and rising above the fight and looking at it from a distance, what are you really arguing about? Is it that important? Is it worth the emotional energy? Because anger makes you drained. Sadness makes you drained. Is the argument that important that you're going to be drained, that you are going to want to go to bed because the anger has drained your energy? Is it that important? Doing this can help you respond from a place of understanding rather than from being defensive. So let's practice. We're going to take just 1 minute to actually practice this together. I want you to think about a situation or an emotion that you've been feeling recently, something that's really weighing on you. Okay, got it? Now close your eyes. Unless you're driving, don't close your eyes, please. If you are driving, try and imagine the situation, but if it's too difficult, it's quite difficult to get into these sorts of states whilst you're driving, do this part later. Pause me, go to another podcast, maybe one of my episodes somewhere else, and then come back to this part. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself sitting in a helicopter. You're on the ground at first. You're fully in the middle of that feeling, of that situation. Now slowly visualize yourself taking off, lifting above the situation. As you rise, notice the way it looks from above. How much smaller it seems compared to how it felt on the ground. As you hover, what do you notice? How does the situation look now that you're distant from it? Are there things that you hadn't noticed before? Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is this a passing emotion? What's within my control? Now take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, imagine yourself descending back down. But now you're equipped with a new perspective, a calmer, more centered approach to the situation. So that's it for today's episode. The helicopter tool is a simple yet powerful way to manage overwhelming emotions and regain that control when things feel a little bit too intense. Remember, emotions are temporary, and by gaining perspective, you can navigate through them with more clarity and peace. If you try out this tool, I would love to hear how it actually works for you. Feel free to reach out on Instagram to me. I do read my messages personally. I don't have a PA that does that. So reach out to me, share your experience. I'm at SMr&x on Instagram. If you found this episode helpful and useful, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps others find the podcast and join us on this journey to be better humans, to be ready to date, all of those things. Just as a reminder, don't forget to get your seat at my free workshop, Confident Dating Sorted. And until next time, take care. Remember, you have got the tools within you to manage anything that life throws at you. Speak to you soon.